Good morning. I'm Mayor Robert Easton III of the great city of East St. Louis, and on behalf of the citizens of East St. Louis, I would like to welcome the Honorable J.B. Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and all of you who have joined us this morning. The Criminal Justice Bill 3653 is a positive step forward in the small and large communities of the state of Illinois. These events that have occurred in 2020 have served us as a necessary moment of reflection of our country and our state. I pray to work together closely to discover solutions and underlying issues of our community. East St. Louis stands ready to test with the tough necessary conversations about what we've done to ensure racial equity in our state, and I would like to thank all legislators to continue to work tirelessly and to improve our communities and this great state of Illinois. Thank you, and without further ado, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Thank you very much, Mayor Eastern, and good afternoon. Well, good morning, everybody. Sorry about that. Very much appreciate the welcome, and I'm always great to be back here in East St. Louis. And of course, to be here with Jackie Joyner-Kersee, a hometown hero, a hero of mine, somebody I care a great deal about, and I know this community does too. And of course, she's a master of breaking barriers and leaving the door open for others to follow. So I want to thank her and the mayor for hosting us today. Lieutenant Governor Stratton and I are proud to be here with Representative LaToya Greenwood, with Senator Chris Belt, as well as other leaders from around the state. Some have traveled quite a far distance, Senators L.G. Sims and Representative Justin Slaughter. I might add they're both chairmen, and that's notable because they really led our efforts on criminal justice reform in the legislature. Activists have been working for decades to make the kinds of criminal justice reform breakthroughs that we celebrate today. People like Stanley Franklin, the president of the East St. Louis branch of the NAACP. Crime Survivors for Safety Area Branch President Gloria Hicks, and Dr. Thomas Trice, Jr., the president of Trican Transformational Training. In 2019, I established the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, overseen by Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, which focuses on our criminal justice reform efforts. Over the last 2 years, working with the General Assembly, we've expunged 500,000 cannabis arrest records, pardoned over 20,000 people, awarded tens of millions of dollars to communities harmed by the war on drugs, and reduced our state's prison population by 25%. A great deal can be accomplished by elected leaders if we're intentional about it. Look at the bill that Senator Belt and Representative Greenwood sponsored to give eligible people who are incarcerated access to Medicaid enrollment before their release, helping people who are formerly incarcerated reintegrate themselves in their communities and build a healthier life. That is thoughtful leadership. But the new law that I signed 2 weeks ago, the SAFETY Act, really became law because of the fierce advocacy for justice by so many organizations and protesters and activists and advocates on the ground all across the state of Illinois, and importantly, because of the sacrifices of the generations who preceded us in this fight, including those who didn't live to see this moment, but spent their whole lives fighting for it. In America, we proclaim our desire for fairness in our justice system, but it's still a work in progress that requires us to fight for change. Today is a good day in that fight. This new law will end the practice of detaining people pre-trial just because they're poor. It invests in the mental health and wellness of law enforcement and creates a more robust statewide certification and decertification system for officers. It also empowers the Attorney General to conduct pattern or practice investigations, updates use of force standards, and requires the use of body cams. Unfortunately, we've already seen some opponents of this law spread untruths and engage in political fear-mongering. No, this does not defund police. No, ending cash bail does not mean more criminals will roam the streets freely. Instead, the changes that will be brought about by this new law will make our families safer. It will bring about more justice and more fairness to many who have so often been forgotten. Because of the people sitting with me today, and many, many more outside of this room, Illinois raises the bar for what's possible, while also acknowledging there's more work to be done. We know that when the laws are failing the people, it's time to change the laws. Step by step, Illinois is showing the nation what it means to restore, rebuild, and realize true justice. So with that, I'm very proud to turn it over to someone who has helped to make all of this change possible, a leader of our Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, and your Lieutenant Governor, my partner in Springfield in governance, Juliana Stratton.
Good morning, everyone. Mayor Eastern, it's so great to be back here in East St. Louis, or as my family from the Metro East says, East Boogie. Thank you, Governor Pritzker. I'm always so proud to stand with you as you govern our state with compassion and courage. From the very beginning, you have been committed to social justice reform. We marched together after the murder of George Floyd, and last fall we proposed 7 criminal justice reform principles. And your recent signing of House Bill 3653 is just one more example of how you are working to advance change, working to repair the harm that has been done by the criminal justice system, especially to Black and brown communities. To my friends and former colleagues of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, including Senator Chris Belt and Representative LaToya Greenwood, you had vision, courage, and you seized the momentum, pushing for change that would positively impact the communities you represent for generations to come. And I especially want to acknowledge Senator L.G. Sims and Representative Justin Slaughter, who are here, and Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford and Senator Robert Peters in their absence. I'm so proud of you all. Thank you for artfully guiding the ship to this historic moment. You didn't walk this road alone, so I must also say thank you to the advocates and leaders from communities throughout Illinois, people on the front lines, right here in East St. Louis, the Metro East area and beyond, who have been organizing and challenging and educating for years to get us to this moment. Together, you can redeem the soul of our nation. These were the last words, the last hope of civil rights icon John Lewis. How do we make these words come true? How do we make that hope a reality? Well, we do it by changing unjust policies and by taking decisive action. Justice is not just about courts, jails, prisons, and policing, although that is a part of it, but real justice centers on making people feel protected and safe and pushing forth change. Changing a system that has historically over-policed and over-incarcerated marginalized communities. Changing a system that criminalizes poverty and makes decisions on pretrial detention not based on a threat to public safety, but based on the amount of money in one's bank account. Changing a system that leads far too many people from our communities to be incarcerated rather than educated. Together we are closer to redeeming the soul of our nation with the signing of House Bill 3653. The time is now, and we cannot wait. Justice cannot wait. Why? Well, you already know the names of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. You already know the names of Ahmaud Arbery and Tony McDade. You already know of the story of Illinois' own Laquan McDonald and Sandra Bland and Emmett Till. And you already know that if I stood here all day today, I wouldn't be able to say all of the names that have been tragically become hashtags or headlines. So Dr. King said it is not possible to be in favor of justice for some and not be in favor for justice for all. So we deserve justice, and I look forward to working alongside Governor Pritzker, the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, members of law enforcement, community stakeholders, and crime survivors to ensure that the letter and spirit of House Bill 3653 is brought to life. I'm now proud to bring forth someone who is a tremendous advocate for his district, someone that you can count on in the fight for justice and equity for all, Senator Chris Belt.
Good morning. I want to start off by thanking Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton for all the work that they've done since being in office, all the advocacy that they've done on behalf of the least of these. That's very, very important for us. Before the start of any business being conducted in the General Assembly, in each respective chamber, a prayer is given. And then each member places their right hand over their hearts and begins to recite a 31-word promise in beautiful unison, all while staring at Old Glory. Of course, I'm referencing the Pledge of Allegiance. And no matter how many times I recite it, I always come back to this section of it. To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With liberty, justice for all. With liberty, justice for all. Please excuse me if I run the risk of sounding like an old 45 record that's scratched and steadily repeating itself, but the sheer poignancy of those words, with liberty and justice for all, resonates through my collective being. For you see, I take those words for face value. I take those words for what they say. And each day we're in the State House, and each time we recite that pledge, it resets what I'm there for: to give voice to the voiceless, to give voice to the marginalized. Perhaps what we're doing in that phrase, to live in a just and civil society where all people have the right to live life more abundantly, is perhaps the most pressing and preeminent things we do as lawmakers. Which brings me to House Bill 3653. House Bill 3653 was drafted in the vein of liberty and justice for all. Now, I'm not naive, and there are some who are promulgating and deliberately and intentionally propaganda campaign against this legislation. Their whole emphasis is to incite fear amongst the general public in the hopes that they will reject this legislation. They will tell you that they support criminal justice reform, but more time is needed to get it right. To them, I would rhetorically ask, is justice delayed or deferred really justice? They will have you to believe that this is an us versus them proposition. It's an either or scenario. But the reality is you can do both. You can support this legislation and you can support law enforcement. You see, I love my children with all my heart and all my soul, but I challenge them to be the very best that they can be as a parent. If I didn't do it, I would be negligent and derelict in my duties as a parent. And the same is true for my role as a legislator. You can love law enforcement, but you have to challenge them to be the very best that they can be and to be inclusive of all people and liberty and justice for all matters. This bill incorporated bipartisan proposals to improve the criminal justice system and was further amended to address concerns that law enforcement had. House Bill 3653 focused on, 1, improving policing to keep all communities safe through accountability and equity. 2, reducing racial disparities and injustices in the criminal justice system that make us less safe, i.e., ending wealth-based bail, increasing prevention and rehabilitation to replace over-incarceration, and 3, helping more crime victims in communities hardest hit by violence through access of recovery support. That's what this bill is really about. So in closing, again, I would be remiss if I did not thank Governor Pritzker for signing House Bill 3653 into law. With the stroke of a pen, the governor moved our state, our beloved state of Illinois, towards a state of inclusivity and not exclusivity. With the stroke of a pen, he moved Illinois closer to the state where liberty and justice for all can be realized and actualized for all of her citizens. Next, I want to thank the sponsors. Thank you for your dedication and your determination in drafting this legislation. Thank you for your willingness to sit at the table with all parties to negotiate the best piece of legislation possible. Thank you for being willing and open-minded enough to amend the legislation over 43 times. Thank you. Finally, a heartfelt and resounding thank you to my 22 Senate colleagues who stood figuratively locked in arms with the Black Caucus and voted yes on this bill. Without them, we're not here right now. Without them, we're not here right now. Thank you for not capitulating to the pressures and the fear and all the chaos caused by those deliberate attempts to undermine this legislation. I have often said that though this legislation was a Black Caucus initiative, the overarching truth of the matter is that it's a resounding win for the human caucus, humanity, the one that we all belong to. And so with that being said, I say God bless you, I say God thank you, and we still have work to do. With that being said, I will bring up my General Assembly colleague, my downstate friend, downstate colleague, LaToya Greenwood of the 114th District. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Governor Pritzker, our Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, Mayor Eastern, the world-renowned Olympian Jackie Joyner-Kersee, my legislative colleagues, Senator Belt, Senator Sims, and Representative Slaughter, and thank you to Mrs. Hicks, Mr. Franklin, and Dr. Trice for joining us today. The pressure of a historic pandemic, the horror of seeing human beings murdered on tape, begging for their lives for the world to see, and the reckoning of how race plays a role in the relationship between police and citizens have all set the tone for us being here today. House Bill 3653 reminds us that we should not be resigned to existing in an unjust system. This historic legislation includes policies that will change the mindset of how police and citizens engage in our state. It includes better training and standards to make our police officers seen as part of the community they serve and protect, not separate from it, building trust and accountability. As a mother of a young Black man, I have always felt this angst the more he grew, the older he became. It is a feeling that I share with countless Black mothers across this state. We have seen what can happen when a routine encounter with the police can turn deadly. We have seen what happens when you jog in your neighborhood, Ahmaud Arbery. We have seen what happens when you are simply asleep in your home, Breonna Taylor. And here we stand in East St. Louis. As my colleague, Representative Slaughter says, protest to progress. I want to stress that the support for this criminal justice reform does not mean being anti-anything, anti-police, defunding the police, all false claims. This is about listening to the people of this state, the people in this community whose stories have fallen on deaf ears for decades and decades. We hear you. The changes contained in this criminal justice reform bill is a beginning, one of the first steps towards racial equity and justice in our state. We have the momentum to continue creating lasting changes to communities like East St. Louis and to advance and to prioritize the safety of all Illinoisans. In closing, let us continue moving forward and keep the people whose lives are most impacted at the center of the conversation. Thank you, and I am honored to bring up my friend and colleague and mentor, Senator L.G. Sims.
Thank you, Representative Greenwood. You know, I've often said that East St. Louis is incredibly lucky to have the dynamic duo of Representative Greenwood and adding my good friend. I'm not going to tell how long we've known each other, Senator Belt, but Senator Chris Belt, to their legislative team in Springfield. They are dynamic legislators who have a heart, have their hands on the pulse of the heartbeat of this community. They are dedicated to the best for this community. It is an honor to serve with them. Second, let me thank. I have traveled the state with this gentleman, and we have talked about the Safety Act over and over again and advocated for it. He is my partner in progress, Representative Justin Slaughter. I talk about the work that he has done in this moment to make a difference in this community and across this great state. But I could not acknowledge the leadership of Mayor Eastern, but of course my former roommate from the Illinois House, our Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and of course our governor, who takes not just the words, but he's committed to action. He puts the gubernatorial pen behind the priorities that he laid out. Governor, I am so proud of the work that you have done and the commitment that you make to all 12 million Illinoisans every day, and particularly as it relates to making a more just and equitable Illinois. You know, the Safety Act is all about reimagining public safety. It's about focusing on the safety of our communities, accountability for law enforcement, and fairness and equity in our criminal justice system. You know, change and reimagining public safety is not a slogan. It is a mindset. It calls for us to change how we do our business. You know, the Safety Act modernizes our sentencing policy, makes Illinois the first state to end the use of wealth-based detention. But it also invests in making our law enforcement officers better, improving the profession of policing, investing in the mental health of our law enforcement officers. You know, I am a student of history, and I think back as we have talked about where we are in this moment. I've thought where we were a century ago. A century ago, right here in East St. Louis, there was a 1917 East St. Louis race riot. But in that moment, we were also dealing with 3 pandemics. We were dealing with an economic pandemic with the Great Depression. We were dealing with the Spanish flu pandemic, and we were also dealing with civil unrest. Fast forward a century, and we're dealing with the same issues all over again. The issues of the pandemic of COVID-19, economic uncertainty, and the scourge of the pandemic of 1619. You know, whenever we talk about the Black Caucus' efforts to rid systemic racism from our Illinois government, there's a visceral response when individuals hear the word racism. And I often remind individuals to separate systemic racism from you being racist. Systemic racism is about advantages being built into systems to the disadvantage of others. It's very different than an individual being racist. Listen to and walk in the shoes of those communities who feel over-incarcerated and under-resourced. You know, I think back to some conversations I had with some youth here just last year from the Voices of Illinois Children, and they talked extensively about their relationship with law enforcement. And that's what's different about this moment. This is not just a moment where we passed a bill. This is an opportunity for us to invest in a movement towards inviting individuals who have traditionally been left out of the system to the table. We invited them to the table in a way that their voices were lifted up, and they were central to passing this legislation. You know, I think back to those young people who talked about their economic insecurity and how they feared that might lead to the criminal justice system. They talked about mental health challenges and how that might lead to the criminal justice system. They talked about their lack of education and how that might lead to the criminal justice system. That's what the Safety Act is all about making a more just and equitable criminal justice system so that individual young people will never be left behind or locked out or locked into conditions. You know, we've heard a lot about the false narrative that's been created, that somehow efforts to change the use of deadly force are somehow anti-police, or how the efforts to end wealth-based detention are somehow anti-safety. Neither is true. You know, change is very, very difficult. I get that. But James Baldwin once said that not everything faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. That is where we are in this moment. We have to face the hard challenges and the realities which have existed, and the conditions that have been created and lasted for decades. We are on that path, and that is because the Safety Act is now the law of Illinois. We will continue to work because reform is a journey, not a destination. And with that, I am pleased and honored to bring to the podium one of my very good friends, an individual who is fighting constantly for this community, President of the East St. Louis branch of the NAACP, President Franklin.
Good morning to Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton, and to our great mayor of this city, Mayor Easton, to our beloved dynamic duo, our state representative, Honorable Christopher Bell and the Honorable LaToya Greenwood, and to the sponsors of this bill, this HB 3653, the Senator Elgin Sims and State Representative Justin Slaughter, and the Honorable Jackie Joyner Kersey, the renowned Jackie Joyner Kersey, classmate of mine, and to all those who assembled here this morning. Again, my name is Stanley Franklin. I am the president of the East St. Louis branch NAACP. Just want to give a shout out that our state president, Teresa Haley, is live streaming us as I speak right now. After the murder of George Floyd, the death of an unarmed black man in the police custody, it lit a fuse that protests all across this country start pumping up about call for change. The East St. Louis branch conducted a call for change protest march that took place on July 9th with a 5-point plan, which clearly defined the areas that needed to be addressed, the structural inequality we wanted to see changed in. Those areas were economic sustainability, education, healthcare, public safety, criminal justice, voting right, and political representation are the 5 major areas of inequality that's affecting blacks in America. We conducted virtual town hall meetings and addressed each area individually. The virtual town hall meetings were very successful. We was able to get our message out to the community. After the last town hall meeting, we issued a call for action. We didn't know that 3 of the points that we mentioned in our protest march were going to be debated in the Illinois General Assembly lame duck session. Our call for action was heard. The East St. Louis NAACP partnered with our dynamic duo, the State Representative Christopher Bell and LaToya Greenwood, in order to bring the sponsors of this bill, the HB 3653, to our community on a virtual town hall meeting, which in my opinion was a huge success because we had over 5,000 viewers that watched that wanted to hear what the sponsors of this particular bill had to say to our community. There's a real issue with policing in our community. From unarmed black men being shot by police officers, public outrage over the death of black Americans at the hands of police officers, and black and brown community distrusting the police officers. As the world's oldest and largest and most respected civil rights organization, the East St. Louis branch NAACP, along with the Illinois State Conference, supports and endorses the tenets associated with House Bill 3653. This House bill was the author of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, approved by the General Assembly, and signed by our governor. The signing of the criminal justice bill is only the beginning to address systemic racism that plague the black and brown community. I agree with Governor Pritzker when he said that the criminal justice package carries with it the opportunity to shape our state in lessons in true justice for our nation. I believe that the new use of force rules and the use of the body cam will lead to a better interaction between the police of the brown and the black community. I believe that the new laws will have some impact on accountability and policing from the bottom up. For instance, the law that requires officers to intervene if they see another officer using excessive force. They won't have to worry about being retaliated against with this new law. Again, this is only the beginning. We will continue this dialogue, assist with educating our community about this bill. As I conclude, I believe that the new law will increase transparency and restore public justice in law enforcement for our community. Thank you. At this time, I want to bring up one of the co-sponsors of this particular HB 36 bill, who I had the pleasure of meeting on a Zoom call and had the pleasure of meeting him personally for the first time today. State Representative Justin Slaughter.
Good morning. Thank you, President Franklin. Is it still morning, afternoon? I don't know. Great to be here. Thank you, State Representative Justin Slaughter, House sponsor of House Bill 3653, the Safety Act. Actually, we never talk about it. It's actually an acronym. It's SAFE-T, Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act. It's a national model. We really want to thank Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton for their efforts to push criminal justice reform. It is important to note that this has always been a priority of the administration. Please, take time to do the research and understand the efforts that both Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton have put into this their entire careers. This isn't just about the protesting and the civil unrest that unfolded this past summer and this past fall. These two individuals, this has been something that they have genuinely put a lot of time and energy and effort into throughout their lives. We are extremely proud that you have used this platform and this opportunity to continue the work that you've done throughout your entire lives. So thank you so much, Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton, my former seatmate on the House floor, for everything that you are doing to address systemic racism in the state of Illinois. Also, would be remiss just to thank all of our hosts. I was kind of starstruck. Jackie Joyner Kersey, who's a childhood hero, still a hero to me, just as a trailblazer. The barriers that you've broken out, was looking at the banners that hang in the rafters here, and these words epitomize your impact that you've had on the world. So thank you so much for being here. Also to my brother, my great friend, State Senator Chris Belt. It's worth noting that Senator Belt, of course, we're here for the criminal justice bill, but Senator Belt was the chief sponsor of the economic development pillar. His passion, his tenacity for this work certainly inspired me. I remember it was 3 a.m, and you were right, just about to present the economic development pillar, and he was so fired up. That gave me a lot of inspiration to go on. I don't know, about eight hours later, I would be presenting the criminal justice reform bill. And to my sister, State Representative LaToya Greenwood, and what she has done in the area, but also for the entire state. With K through 12 education, just been absolutely tremendous. I believe you're vice chairing that now, and also chairing the House Health and Health Access Committee as well. So thank you, Representative Greenwood, for all that you've done. Like my colleague said, we are going from protest to progress. What does that really mean? It means we have a great state. The people that make up this great state are engaged. We believe that the people of this state genuinely want more fairness and more equity in a criminal justice system that is rooted in racism. As we turn the chapter to implementation, we do it with respect, with honor, with admiration for those in the law enforcement profession. But we believe that these are common sense improvements that we can bring to our system. 9 out of 10 Illinoisans want a statewide use of force policy, want our officers to utilize body cams, want our officers to have best practice training. All of those provisions in this bill. And of course, we also are proud of the work that our Attorney General Raul also did on establishing a more robust and what we believe effective certification process for our law enforcement officers. We're proud of the total comprehensive package of this bill, not just about policing, also many of these provisions addressing our mass incarceration crisis. We just believe that the over-policing, over-arresting, the over-punitive approach is something that we have to move away from. The section of this bill being highlighted by our efforts to move away from a wealth-based detention and ending cash bail. We become really the first state in the country in regards to how we're putting forth this effort. And we just believe it's inhumane to subject individuals to pretrial detention before they've had that trial, and to base that on their ability or inability to financially post bond. We want to take a moment just to thank everyone for their tireless efforts to make this possible. Senator Belt had mentioned our colleagues that are not in the Black Caucus. We love them. We thank them for understanding that Black Lives Matter. We thank them for the attention that they gave the Legislative Black Caucus agenda, and we thank them for their vote in them understanding the significance of what this means. We are turning a page. It's a new chapter. We must embrace a spirit of collaboration. There's a lot more work to do. We'll have more press conferences, more town halls. But I really think that it is a great time for our state to continue to lift up, in my opinion, which is a national model, under Lieutenant Governor Stratton's office, the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative. That is the acronym, right? Okay. The JEO initiative. And not really just look at keeping people out of the criminal justice system, but what do we do to rebuild, restore, and revitalize all of our communities? And so with not just the signing of the criminal justice bill, what you saw is the Legislative Black Caucus put forth a comprehensive agenda. I think we are confident the governor will hopefully be signing these other pillars into law, but economic development, education, and public health also pieces to what we believe we can do in terms of addressing the myriad of issues that permeate through our communities of color. We know and believe that everyone in this state can and will be a productive and positive citizen, no matter what community or zip code you're from. The fierce urgency of now is ever fitting. We are moving forward with criminal justice reform. And yes, I'll say it one more time, we are going from protest to progress. With that being said, it's my honor to bring to the podium Ms. Gloria Hicks. Ms. Hicks?
I'm short. Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, for being here. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Stratton. My name is Gloria Hicks. I am a crime survivor living right here in East St. Louis, am a member of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. I have been, with my own eyes, impacted the address crime and violence does in a community like mine. As a sister, I seen my own brother suffer and later die because of assault of a firearm. As a first responder in this community, I've seen countless lives lost to gun violence. As a friend and a grandmother, I've seen trauma up close from those who have lost their children. But a few days ago, I saw hope. I saw when Governor Pritzker stood at the Legislative Black Caucus and other advocates to sign House Bill 3653. Thank you. I was hopeful because finally we have the elected leaders who felt the urgency to act, who saw what crime and violence was doing to our community. They listened to the voices of crime survivors across the state who urged for the criminal justice system to focus on prevention, rehabilitation, and crime services for victims. That's exactly what this bill does. It makes us safer, prioritize rehabilitation, and expanded access to critical victims services that have to help our communities heal. That's why I'm here today. I'm here to thank Governor Pritzker for acting on what matters to survivors like me. At the end of the day, we have the same goal. We want our families to feel safe, and we want what happened to us never, ever happen to anyone else. And now, thanks to House Bill 3653, we have the tools to address trauma, to break the cycle of violence that is happening now. On behalf of the crime survivor in this community and in others across the state, I once again thank you, Governor Pritzker, and the rest that join in on this. We greatly appreciate your visit here today. I look forward to seeing the positive changes this bill will bring and the lives these reforms will save in the years ahead. I also want to thank LaToya Greenwood for allowing me to speak. I want to thank the mayor. Nobody here knows me, but I'm an advocate for East St. Louis. I work under Vivetta Granger at Community Lifeline. I work with CSSJ. I'm the president of the East St. Louis chapter, which CSSJ is a great place to work for. I also want to thank Jackie Joyner-Kersey for allowing me here. Nobody knows when Jackie sees me, she turns and get ready to run. I want to thank everybody for allowing me to be here. And again, thank you, Governor Pritzker, for passing this bill. I also want to bring up the next person up, and that's Thomas Trice. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, Honorable Senator Chris, LaToya Greenwood, Honorable LaToya Greenwood, Lieutenant Governor, for having me today. My name is Dr. Thomas Trice. I am the President and CEO of Trican Consulting. I'm also an associate professor at William Woods University that's terminal degrees are in criminology and in leadership management. I want to talk about my support of this bill in one aspect, and that's leadership. Leadership matters. As we look behind me, leadership obviously matters. As an academic and as a retired law enforcement captain and as a black man, those three components make me up. But without the academic part and the retired law enforcement part, in most cases I would be just seen as a black man. But as someone that retired as a leader in law enforcement and the criminal justice field. I feel strongly about this bill because I think it presents an opportunity for leaders in the criminal justice field in all aspects, corrections, law enforcement, and the judicial branch, to exercise that leadership. Change is hard, and change leadership is even harder. But if law enforcement and the criminal justice community are to build the relationships that can bridge the gap between community trust and law enforcement, it has to start somewhere, and it has to start now. As a social scientist, I've heard many themes here today as the members have spoke. I've heard reimagine, I've heard liberty, I've heard justice, I've heard trust. What I haven't heard is empathy. Law enforcement officers must have empathy. Leadership must look for those law enforcement officers, recruit those law enforcement officers that exhibit that empathy. Empathy is the ability to put oneself in another's shoes. We've heard many people come up and say there are many good law enforcement officers. As a man that retired out of this field and still work in it with thousands of law enforcement officers across this country, I wholeheartedly support law enforcement. But there are bad actors. And the leadership of law enforcement has to recognize, discipline, and remove those bad actors. That is the mission and the courage of leadership. So with my last 45 seconds, I'll leave you with these three acronyms. DDC, determination, dedication, and commitment. Leaders must be determined to hold those officers accountable. They must be determined to better train officers. They must be determined to recruit the right officers. And they must be determined to put the right leaders in place. If some law enforcement agencies were a business, and you may ask, what do the two have in common? They're both in the customer service business. And they change based upon customer needs. They must be dedicated to excellence, not partial excellence. I know because there are many officers I've worked with in the past that are. And they must be committed to doing what's right for the citizens that they serve. These three acronyms have been shown in all of the leadership leaders to build not only good character, but good results. So with that, I encourage all law enforcement agencies to embrace this bill as it's not written in stone. It is malleable, and it is time for a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift can be a good one if all leaders get on board and work with the leaders that are on this platform and on this stage to do what's best for all of our communities and the officers that serve us. Thank you. Governor Pritzker will now come up and answer any questions. Governor Pritzker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and happy to take any. I'm going to invite my colleagues from Springfield, if you don't mind, to join me up here, and others, just to make sure that in case you have questions for them as well. Hi, Kelsey. Nice to see you again.
We published a story recently about the St. Clair County Jail. We had heard from more than 30 inmates and their family members who said that they didn't have access to masks inside the jail until this year, literally this year. And 3 of them have died due to PPEs of COVID. And they say they just haven't had the protection they need from COVID to be safe. And a lot of them are stuck there, and it's regular, overpopulated.
Well, that's terrible, what you're describing, and shouldn't be the case. As you know, we have stockpiles of PPE that have been delivered to our local public health departments all across the state of Illinois. You know, early on in the pandemic, there was a shortage, you may recall, and we had to go literally have planes, our own chartered aircraft, go pick up purchased PPE so that we could bring it to the state of Illinois. But not since July, really, have we had a problem with stockpiles of PPE, masks and other gowns, gloves, other things that people require. And so it's available. I would imagine that the sheriff may not have spoken with the local public health department, also has the ability to call the Illinois Department of Public Health, because we too at the state level have a stockpile, but we have delivered to every local public health department, and whenever we're asked, we send packages of PPE. So that's just not something that should be happening. I would add one more thing. It's really not been since July that we have, where back then we halted the transfer of prisoners to our prisons, which were also overcrowded. But in July, we ended that practice. The jails now can transfer prisoners. They just have to keep them in a quarantined area, which every jail has the ability to do, before they transfer them to the prisons, to the Department of Corrections. So I'm not sure what the challenge is in St. Clair that's specific to St. Clair. I would just say, please get the PPE. If you don't have it at your local public health department, which I find surprising, then please contact the Illinois Department of Public Health, because it's been available for many, many months now.
They have it now, but what can be done to figure out what happened, what went wrong?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't on the ground here, but all I can say is that it shouldn't have happened as it was described to me by you. You know, there's no reason for people not to have PPE available to them, and we've delivered to every congregate setting in the state of Illinois that has asked us, and we've made sure that they know where to acquire the PPE if they're a private institution, for example, so that they could get it, and we've even delivered to private institutions who may not have had the resources. So it's just not something that should be happening literally 9 months after we've had, you know, a reasonably plentiful supply of PPE available in the state of Illinois. Any other questions? Great, thank you, everybody.